This is the Talk CNY Economic Champions Miniseries presented by NBT Bank, a podcast by Center State CEO, Central New York's premier leadership and economic development organization. This series will shine a light on local businesses making an impact in our community and driving our regional economy forward. Whether it's new jobs, company milestones, business expansions, investments in operations, or DEI initiatives, join us as we celebrate CNY's economic champions. Today's conversation is with multi-hyphenated entrepreneur Arel Moodie. You may know him as the host of Disney Plus show Family Reboot, which is oh so much fun, but we will be talking about his current businesses and work as a professional speaker. Arel is co-founder of the tech startup Talkadot, a top tool for professional speakers, allowing them to capture leads, collect data, and prove their value with hard numbers. He has also co-founded Profound Mastermind, where he helps bring together some of the top entrepreneurs and business professionals in upstate New York to partake in unforgettable experiences with unforgettable humans. Beyond these exciting ventures, Arel spends quite a bit of time hopping from city to city as a professional speaker. We're talking 48 states and 5 countries to audiences that add up to 750,000 people. Now that's a big number. In fact, if we compare it to the Syracuse metropolitan area, tack on another 100,000 folks and we're in the ballpark. Arel has been invited to speak at the White House twice, the TEDx stage 3 times, and has been quoted in media outlets like Inc. magazine, the New York Times, Forbes, and many others. So let's go ahead and hear from the expert himself. Today we are here with Arel Moodie, and he has joined us to share some awesome information. We can't wait to get started. Arel is a public speaker. He's spoken in, 48 states? Is that right?
48 states, yeah.
Oh my goodness, he's a host on Disney Plus. He is a co-founder of the mastermind Profound and also co-founder of Talkadot. So Arel, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to jump in. It's fun whenever I get to do some homegrown stuff. A lot of the things that I do are always not here when I do interviews and such. So to do it here, it's a joy.
Yay, okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So first let's learn just about you, Arel, the human being behind all of the things.
Yeah.
So what is your tie to Central New York?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. So I grew up in New York City, and I went to Binghamton University. So when I was in Binghamton University, that was my first kind of touch point of upstate New York. Loved Binghamton University. I met who became my wife. I met my first business partner. I met my best friends. I figured out I wanted to get into entrepreneurship. I met my mentor. So Binghamton was just a huge, huge thing for me. My very, very first startup was an off-campus housing service for college students. So we helped them find places to live and that kind of stuff. So I did that after I graduated college. But I was living in Binghamton at the time, and I started touching public speaking. So I started doing a little bit more public speaking, and then I had my first flight. So I needed to fly. And I love Binghamton for a million reasons, but the airport it's a regional airport, so you didn't have a lot of options out, a lot of options in.
Right.
Plane tickets were very expensive. So I started driving to Syracuse. And I would drive to Syracuse, and one day I had a 9 a.m. flight from Syracuse, but I had to leave at 5:36, and I was exhausted. I was like, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'll temporarily move to Syracuse. It's still close enough. I'm still in Central New York. We were servicing a lot of universities in upstate New York at the time. And then just fell in love with the place. I've been here since 2009.
Oh wow, so it's been a while.
Yeah. I've been in upstate New York longer than I've been in New York City now.
Isn't that funny when that happens?
Yeah, I've crested over. I always know the test. This is my test. When you meet someone, and let's say you're in Chicago, and someone says, "Where are you from?" How do you answer that question? So for the longest time, I used to say, "Well, I'm from New York City, but I live in upstate New York." Now I say, "I'm from upstate New York."
Yeah, because you're rooted. Your family's here.
Family's here. Everything's here.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so you're on this journey, you're traveling around, you're finally situated somewhere with a great airport. And by the way, we do have such a great airport right now.
It is, in my humble opinion, the best airport experience, because I can get in through security within 15 minutes, right?
Tremendous.
I don't have to get there 3 hours ahead of time, and I can get anywhere I need to go. So, big fan.
Yeah. And let's give this some credence, because you go to a few. I mean,
judging from how many places you've spoken at, you've
Yeah.
probably seen a few airports.
I've been to every major airport, almost every major city. I've been almost, not every city, obviously, but every major city in the country I've been to. I've been to a lot of smaller cities as well. I could live anywhere because all I need is an airport and internet, but I love it here more than anything else.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so let's hear more about what happened from there, because obviously your journey has taken you in some really interesting directions.
Yeah, so, entrepreneurship has been kind of my thing, my bug, and the thing about entrepreneurs is you either get into one business and you do it for like 40 years, which is kind of rare. It's kind of like someone gets in a job and works in the same job for 40 years and get the gold watch and retire, which is kind of more of a, that used to be the rule, now that's the exception. I think entrepreneurship is very similar in that I think maybe back in the day people used to build one business, do it for 40 years and then finish.
Yeah.
Now I think entrepreneurship has delved a little bit more into, as an entrepreneur, whatever we're interested in, we have the ability to build something around our interest. And I tend to find that whatever you are most interested in, you'll be more excited to work on, you'll move toward, it'll be interesting. So when I moved here, I was really into speaking. That was like the thing that, I was like, that was the reason. I started caring about speaking more than my first startup, so I had to exit out of that and sell my shares to my partners, focus on speaking. But then I got into this event planning business called Extreme Entrepreneurship Tour. So we traveled around the country. We took a tour bus, wrapped it, and traveled all over the country with entrepreneurs under the age of 30 who built million-dollar businesses, super successful. And we would speak to students and young people about the benefits of entrepreneurship. So that's what I did, from like 2009 to like 2013. And then I got back into speaking, more just keynoting and doing events. And then from there, you start uncovering what my mentor always told me is the secret of entrepreneurship, which is not to look for opportunities, to look for problems. The solutions to those problems are the opportunities. That's Angelo Mastrangelo, one of the greatest minds I've ever met, professor at Binghamton University, former CEO of Adirondack Beverages, smart dude. But I always remembered whenever you get annoyed with something, there's probably other people who have that annoyance, and if you can solve that and it's a big enough problem, they'll pay you for it. And then, that led to speaking. It's actually an interesting story.
Okay, let's go.
So Jeff, if you're watching this, I'm going to tell you this is a Jeff Knaus reference here. So because I spoke at a Center State CEO event, Jeff's business partner, Jake, came up to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to connect." And I said, "Great." I didn't know anything about Digital Hive, which was a digital marketing company at the time. So I was like, but I want to get to know you guys. So I got to know him, we kind of became friends, and then we had this wonderful idea that because I'm, passionate and some might say good at public speaking, I would do some public speaking on behalf of Digital Hive. So Digital Hive was getting a lot of their clients through speaking engagement, but Jeff was like, "Hey man, you're way better at this than me, maybe you should do it." So I said, "Cool, I think there's a good potential opportunity here. I could do that, but still do my company." And I thought it'd be great. Then that was in 2020. So when 2020 hit, all speaking opportunities went out the window and the whole world shut down and in-person events kind of went. Now, Digital Hive happened to get acquired during that time, but because of that event that I spoke at, and because I met Jeff, and because we had this idea, then he exited out of it, he had the idea for Profound. And then he said, we never got to do that thing together with Digital Hive, but maybe we can do this thing with Profound together. And that's a mastermind group of the top 100 entrepreneurs, executives in the Upstate New York area, Central New York area. So that's how Profound kind of, I was like, all right, great, let me lend my knowledge of speaking, my knowledge of content creation, and let's put something cool together. So every opportunity typically comes from trying to solve a problem for someone else or yourself. So even though the journey kind of is very, anyone who thinks entrepreneurship, business success is a straight line, I've almost always found you kind of have these weird pit stops. And then there's a term, it's not a real word, but it's called obliquity, which is instead of going straight to the thing you want, you kind of go in this really roundabout way. And most people, if they look at what they're doing and how they're doing it now, it actually happened in a very weird obliquity way.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, it makes sense in hindsight. At the time, you feel kind of random and ridiculous, but if you look back on that course, it actually kind of pins together pretty nicely.
Yeah, and that's why I'm a big advocate of just show up to things.
Yeah.
I spoke at that event probably 4 years in a row, and nothing business-wise came from it, right? There was no I got a contract now that I did it. I was just I want to help, and people invite me to speak, so I speak, and it turned into an incredible partnership. Yeah.
Well, that's Tremendous. Okay, so Profound, the mastermind. You mentioned a little bit about what it is, but say somebody's listening right now and they're like, the top 100, I'm not in it.
Yeah.
Should I be? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, so we have an incredible group of entrepreneurs, executives, and the whole idea behind a mastermind is if you take really, really good, smart, caring people and you put them into the same room and create experiences, good things will happen. Relationships, personal, business, fun. What happens about
Fun.
Yeah, it's tons of fun. Like one of the things that we talk about in Profound is that we're who first, what second. So what happens is a lot of times when you walk into an event, the first questions people will ask you revolve around what do you do, what's your title, those kind of things. Profound, there are members who are dear, beloved friends with others, and they've got no idea what they actually do with their business. Because we care about the individual first. We care about who you are. So we create these experiences where we bring in speakers, we go on excursions, we go on experiences, we go to like local restaurants and we do like, dinner clubs, and we have parties and fun stuff, and go to basketball games. But we also have brought in like Damon John to speak and Mario Lopez to speak, and we've been to Miami and New York City, and we went to a Broadway show and we got to hang out with the Broadway cast afterwards, and it's just like really, really cool experiences. And when Jeff and I and Adam Weitzman started it, we had this vision of creating this incredible entity. Now Profound is member-led, so we have this incredible board of members who are taking on that leadership role to continue that. So if someone is listening to this and they're like, well, like I want to do those kind of things, I want to meet the movers and shakers of the area, there's incredible opportunities with Center State CEO to do incredible things. Profound is just another opportunity to do such activities.
All right. So maybe more on an intimate level, like really getting to know people and their wholeness.
Yeah. And what I like about it is that we intentionally build experiences that make you care about a person, and then when business, and because our members do business with each other all the time, but it never feels very transactional. Sometimes, like when you meet someone, it's kind of like, well, can you help me? Can you not help me? Oh, if you can't help me, goodbye. Yeah. This is more like I care about who you are. Oh, it just so happens that, you're a photographer. I have this huge photography need. Now I'm going to contract you because you're my person. And then there's this part of it, which is it's hard to fully appreciate this until you're in it. Everyone in our group is very skilled at the thing they do. But the other thing that happens is there's accountability. And this is a piece that whenever someone chooses a service provider, I don't know if this is thought of, but it's super important.
Okay.
So if I'm in a community with you, there is an accountability that if you ever did something wrong, stupid, bad, you have a community of people that are going to be like, what are you doing? So a lot of times when we hire a professional like a contractor or someone, we're like, well, what if they do a bad job? Like, what if the mechanic is bad? What if the contractor is, what if they're going to do something to hurt me, take advantage of me, not give me the best service?
Yeah.
But what's great about when you're in a business group with people, not only are they skilled at what they do, because of the group accountability, you know that you're going to get the highest level of service. Everyone is, it behooves me, not just in general to do a good job, but to be like, you're my people. I'm going to go above and beyond for you. And if for some reason I didn't, there's dozens of other humans that are going to hold you accountable. So, when our members hire, we have a guy named Nick Barnello, incredible human being, one of the best contractors. We have incredible people who build. But if you hire him to do your kitchen, in general, he's always going to do an incredible job. But there's a general added sense of he's going to go even above and beyond because we're in the same social circle. We're in the same community together. And I think when you can hire people and they have accountability within your social circle, there's just this sense of, I know the job's going to be done at the highest level, and you can just move on emotionally and do other stuff.
Moving on emotionally, let's just have a moment for that. Yeah, well, we do. We get stuck there. I think you make a really great point about these are our real fears. We don't always feel comfortable to articulate them, maybe, to a friend or family member. Yeah, we don't want to be in that position where our expectations aren't met. Yeah. That feels really bad. So I love this.
You go to any website, everyone's website will say best service, best product, best quality. So how do you actually know? So you might go on Google reviews, but when it's you're my person. I know you. I've seen you for the last 6 months. I'm going to see you for the next 6 months. And hey, could you go do this thing? You're going to, they got me. I don't have to worry. And I think what happens with really successful people, from my observation, is that they always have vendors or partners or service providers that they can choose that come highly recommended from their social circle of trust.
Yes.
And when you can build that, it's beyond all the experiences, it's just wonderful to know if I ever needed something, I know I could get it, and I can get it from people who are good at what they do and good people.
Excellent. Okay, so let's see if we can do this here.
Yep.
I'd love to see how there is a tie-in here about best practices, doing your best, rising to that occasion of how are we going to over-deliver. How does that work with Talkadot? What is the service there?
Yeah, so as a professional speaker, there's a couple of problems that I've always had. So there's two types of speakers. I always like to make this distinction. There's content experts and there's celebrity speakers, okay? Celebrity speakers, doesn't really matter what they say. It just matters that they showed up. Content experts, which is people like me and all the people I know, our job is to do a really, really good job with our content. Now, whenever we speak and we do a keynote, the moment we walk off the stage, we're unemployed again. We've got to figure out where am I going to get my next presentation from? And then when someone does express interest in me, how do I get them to trust me? How do I get them? Because what I know about all folks who bring in speakers, and think about this from, a Center State CEO lens, when you have a keynote speaker for one of your events, you're constantly thinking, are they going to suck? Are they going to do a good job? Can I trust them? Are they knowledgeable? Are they going to be interesting? Those things matter. So what happened is I kept feeling well, how do I make it easier for me to get my next talk? And how do I make it easier for people to decide that they should work with me? So what we came up with was a really simple solution that solves a big problem for speakers, which is we have a survey that's specifically built for speakers. They put up a QR code, the audience scans it, they fill out this very specially designed survey. We've had over 1 million responses, 99% completion rate, and that's very important to us. That means that people start it, finish it the way it's designed. But when it's done, it automatically generates a data report with quantitative data, qualitative data, testimonials, feedback. We have AI summaries of what the audience got and the outcomes. So I can now share that with my host and say, here's the impact of what we did. I can share that with potential hosts to say, hey, you want to hire me? Here's 5 events I did. Here's all of the data that I measured, all of the testimonials from the audience. Here's all the outcomes achieved. So you can see that. But it also, for anyone in the audience who raises their hand and say, I do want to work with you, will allow them to raise their hand and then put them into a category for them to be followed up with. But
what?
We don't bother anyone who's not interested. That's the key. So the way the questions are posed
I love this so much.
If I'm interested, I get the information. If I'm not interested, we never get those questions. So the audience has a wonderful experience. The host gets the data that they want. The speaker gets the data that they want and the leads. So it makes it easier to book your next talk.
This is genius.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And really helpful on the other side too. Everybody wins. The audience wins. The speaker wins. The host, whatever organization is hosting you gets that information too.
Yeah. So it's built in a way that. So the other thing I didn't mention is that the audience, as a thank you for giving you their feedback, they can get something the speaker would want to give to them, like a PDF, an ebook, a video. So either a summary of what they talked about, next steps they can take. So from the audience perspective, they benefit because they get this resource from the speaker.
Yeah.
The speaker benefits because they get this data, they get this outcome. They don't have to crunch numbers. They don't have to analyze or be a data analyst in any shape. We do all that for them. They get leads so they can book more speaking engagements. The hosts win because every host wants to measure how do we do. And we also include areas for improvement as well. So
yes, we all have blind spots. Got to get them.
And it's all done automatically. So the goal is host wins, potential host wins, speaker wins, audience wins, and it's all done in a 2-minute process.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. And I think we can all recall times when we've sat in an audience. We want to be in the moment, paying attention and not worrying about taking notes, but we can't really be relieved of that stress unless we know we're going to get something later, which is what you're saying you're supplying. So that allows us to really be present. So I love that thought too.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate. So I like to give summaries of what I talked about, either a copy of my slides, and I usually tell my audience, hey, if you like to take notes, feel free to do so. But if you're like me and you don't worry about it. I'm going to give you everything we talked about here at the end. And you see this sigh of relief from the audience where it's good, I can just be with you and not worrying about writing down, missing something that you're saying. I can be fully here and still get all the notes. So, our goal ideally is to elevate the entire events industry. There's conferences and speakers speaking at events multiple times a day, every single day. all over this country, and there's no third-party tool that actually validates how good a speaker is, right? If you look at Uber or Airbnb or Trustpilot or Google reviews, those are all third parties that will validate if something is actually good. In the event industry, everything is done by gut. I think this person will do a good job. So our goal over time is to build the largest database of data on how effective speakers are, so that events can always choose the right speaker every time. So imagine every event you go to, that's the perfect speaker for us, and that's what we're going to move toward.
So that information becomes available. Oh my goodness, you can search a database based on specific factors of feedback, like how people were received, or what other sorts of things are we rating? Are we asking if this person was funny, or are we asking if this person...
So we have a system-generated survey based upon what event organizers told us, but speakers do have the ability to customize it, because sometimes speakers are inspirational, and sometimes speakers are more factual, and sometimes speakers are more research-based. So there's ability to change it, but I can rate people on their effectiveness, their humor, on the interactiveness. As a speaker, if I'm not funny, I don't want to be rated on how funny I am. But what will happen over time is that we'll have this incredible database that a speaker can say, hey, look, I have 10,000 people that have seen me speak. 99% find my talk valuable. 93% want to hear me speak again. 94% say that my talk was relevant to their position. And then with AI, which is just, obviously everyone knows how cool AI is, but now we can read all the sentiment of what people are saying with their words. And we can kind of say, like, here's what the audience is saying, here's what the takeaways are. And ideally, in a not too distant future, we hope to be able to make it easier for the organizations to use that data to make the decisions to say, like, hey, I'm a Chamber of Commerce who's looking for a keynote speaker that can speak for 20 minutes and has, these qualities and understands this regional background and, is funny and, all the things that I would want, kind of like as a prompt, if you will. And then we'll actually have the data to say, this one. And then you get to decide which ones you want, but something that might take, 6 months, maybe it takes 6 minutes.
Right. Gosh. This is so one of those like toaster ideas. Like you're like, wait, toasting bread? That's awesome. Why does that exist? Like I'm seriously, I'm like sitting here thinking like all the conferences I've been to, all these like relevant engagements. Why hasn't this ever happened before?
Well, up until now, my belief is that feedback has been kind of a privatized activity. So I'm an organization, I host a speaker, I might get feedback. Now, this is the funny thing about feedback. Most people, if they do a survey, if they do a feedback survey, they capture the information, but most people don't do anything with it. They'll say, hey, what did the survey results say? Oh, we haven't done anything with it yet. And then maybe 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, they'll finally sit down and crunch the numbers. And by that time, you've emotionally moved on to the project that you're dealing with a month from now. So what's fascinating is most events are making all of their decisions based on gut feelings. How should we improve this? Well, here's what my gut says. How should we make this event? I think this. But they actually don't really know. But if they do, it's individualized. I do it, but I'm not sharing this information. But what if there was a way to, obviously without sharing anyone's personal information that doesn't want to be shared, like we wouldn't do anything like that. But to be able to say, these are the, we can't do this yet, but our vision is to get to a point where we can say, hey, in your industry, these are the trends that are most interesting because we have the data. So we can then inform, you might want to look for speakers like this. You might want to look for content like this because the data shows it's interesting. But if it's all housed, like if I do a Google Forms, you do a Google Forms, and we keep it in our Google Drive, there's no way to grow off of that. But if you can create a tool that makes it easier, that can then give suggestions and improvements, then everybody wins. And we've all been to boring events. We've all been to terrible events. We've all thought someone was going to be great, and then they turned out to be terrible. So if we get to a place where we can make it easier for events to have non-boring events and non-boring speakers and make it easier for people, we hope that as we look back at this moment, people will say, man, how come no one's done that before? And that would be a wonderful toaster moment for us.
Yes, perfect. So great ideas, and then suddenly here you are in action and striving toward this thing. But how did you get started?
Yeah, so, when we first started, I know service, speaking, coaching, consulting, event planning. I don't know much about tech when I started. I still like am learning every single day. And the way obliquity works, which we kind of talked about things you don't expect, within the first year or so of starting Talkadot, I hear about the Syracuse Surge Accelerator from the Tech Garden. And they're like, we want to help people of color who are in the tech industry succeed, who normally don't get the support they need. And we want to create an accelerator right here. And I was like, I mean, that couldn't be more perfect, you know?
Like, you wouldn't mind being accelerated.
Oh, no, who does it? Like, who does, like, getting in accelerators is so valuable, and it's so hard, and it's so it's like everyone who builds something great is either in an accelerator, has a co-founder that was in an accelerator. It's just a very normal practice, but finding them, getting in them it's not easy.
Yeah.
So when I found out that there was one here, I was like, all right, well, I got to at least apply. I mean, that's the least I could do. And apparently there was a whole bunch of applications. I was one of the top 5 teams. I got into the program, and it was everything, because there's a couple of benefits when you're in an accelerator. The first benefit is you get to ask questions that normally may not feel comfortable to ask to your, here's the best way to describe it. If I've only been married to one person and in a relationship with one person, I don't know what the intricacies of marriage and relationships really are, because I only have one data point. I have one person.
You know what your marriage
I know what
like.
mine is like. Is this normal for other people? And then other people tend to, on social media, make everything look like it's perfect. You know, this is not a disrespectful statement to Jennifer Lopez, but, you know, I think...
Where are we going?
Yeah, well, like a month before she, I guess, got divorced, she was posting how in love she is and how she has the best man in the whole world. And, you know, they divorced a month later. So what happens sometimes is that you see this perfection on social media, but no one really wants to share, like, because I don't think in 1 month's time that relationship unraveled. I'm sure there was things happening before. And in business, it's the same thing. But if you have nowhere to go, no one to talk to.
Yeah, no one's like, this was my worst month of performance ever.
Yeah, and people tend to share how bad things are only in the context of, like, if it sounds cool or a humble brag, or if you're looking, you know, you're
because it
fishing
happened
for likes.
way back then, and now it's so much better.
You know, people can talk about scars, but not wounds.
Oh,
right?
Okay, that's a whole thing.
Yeah,
right,
you know, when you have a scar, I can be like, oh, here's how I got the scar. But if you have a wound, it's tougher. So when you're running business, you have all these wounds, and you're like, this isn't working, this is stressing me out, this is frustrating, I don't know how to do this. When you have a room full of people who are like, well, I'm dealing with that, here's how I did it. But tech is different than, you know, someone who runs a painting business. It's a business, it's a wonderful business, but they're dealing with different problems than a software as a service, a SaaS business. So to be around people with similar problems, you know, Syracuse Surge Accelerator, you know, led by Brandon and Dr. Rahim, they brought in some like just incredible minds, and I was able to ask questions and get solutions and get support in a way that was only other people in the tech industry could really, really give. And to have that here was incredible.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see how you've evolved through that and out of it and where you are now. And then even the plans into the future. And let's fixate on the future for a moment, because obviously we have some tremendous things happening in Syracuse right now. And ever since, you know, about 2 years ago when we got Micron's big announcement, how has this impacted your different businesses? What are you seeing into the future about how we can evolve forward? And how does that sort of play a role into your decision making?
I mean, you can mark my words.
Let's go.
And you can mark my words on this one as well, okay? We are on the precipice of the biggest renaissance in this area, period. No, whatever you think, whatever anyone thinks how big the things are in this area are because of Micron and everything else, it is probably 0.1% of how big it's actually going to be. I don't think people fully grasp what's going to happen to this area, because once that starts developing, they're building literally a city, Micron. They're building the equivalency of a city with their plant, from the buildings to the concrete. You got to think all of the auxiliary services that are going to be necessary, house cleaners, food delivery, housing prices are going to go up crazy high. So people getting into properties now, like, we've lived in this world where it's been very comfortable, and people are like, is it really going to happen? It's going to happen, and when it does happen, it's going to be bigger than any possible, like, I can't even express it with words of how big it's going to be. So when folks are in the area now, one of the things that I've always loved about this area, so I'll go past to go into the future, is I could call, if I wanted to, not that I would, but if I wanted to, I'm sure I could get the mayor on the phone. I love Ben Walsh. He's a wonderful guy. Like at the time of the recording, he's the mayor. But you could get the mayor on the phone if you're a business professional, and he would actually care enough to answer. If there was like a CEO of a large company and I wanted to get them on the phone, I know enough people and we have a tight enough knit community that we can. But as we get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's going to start becoming a little bit more like a New York City, a little bit more like a San Francisco, where they'll exist and they'll be there, but it's just going to be harder. So I think people who are actually creating roots now, building reputations now, building relationships now, they're going to have such a huge advantage because it's going to be harder and harder as the area gets bigger and bigger. So I think the future is just wildly exciting. And if people don't realize it now, they're going to be kicking themselves in like 15 years, kicking themselves.
You know, we've tugged at a lot of threads when it comes to economic impact and what we're looking at in this trajectory, but this has not been one yet. So this idea of the access we have now being something we really need to pay attention to and dig into is really interesting.
We have some incredible businesses, incredible entrepreneurs, incredible executives, and the thing is everyone's pretty accessible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I can't imagine there's a business owner you could tap on the shoulder who'd be like, no! You're like, it's not going to happen. They're not going to do that. I think within 15 to 20 years, when you get as big as I think we're going to get, I think it's going to come harder and harder and harder. So, and then it's like, this is a weird example, but like, if I'm a really good basketball player, I can make friends when I'm in like junior high, high school, college. But then once I make it into the NBA, it's kind of like, who can I trust? Who's really a friend because they're my friend, and who's a friend simply because they think they can get something from me? And I think we're going to see an explosion of businesses. We're going to see an explosion of businesses coming in. We're going to see current businesses doing better than they've ever done before. I hope that we can maintain what makes us special, but it's just, the bigger things get, the harder it is to just do certain things.
Yeah, and let's wrap back to Profound for a quick second, because you said something that kind of stands out. If you're listening and you feel like that's you, that you are having a hard time trusting peers and wondering who's in it for what, it sounds like you have a group that might be a really good place for that person.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants people to treat them well, right? You also got to treat other people well, and you've got to put yourself out there, and you've got to, be involved in the community. So I remember when I first got here, and I was like, well, how am I going to get to know people? The advice I got over and over was join Center State, get involved with Center State, meet people. Like, that is the best thing you can do. So when you invited me to, speak at certain events or MC certain events, I always say yes, because the more and more I can be within the community and be around, the better. And with Profound, we want to do the same thing. We want to create experiences for people to come together. But I'm a big advocate that if you just want to get, you're going to be in a really bad spot. We have a thing within Profound called the Giver's Game. It's a fun little game we play amongst our members where it's, I have to give stuff to you and serve you before you do something for me. My goal is to play this game of life with everyone where it's like, I'm going to give to you and I don't want anything back. I don't expect anything back. And my job is to give to you first. So imagine being in a room full of people where everyone's playing that game. It's totally different because most games are like, well, what can I get from you? But then if everyone's giving, everyone's winning.
I love that. One more time. Say it one more time.
If everyone's giving, everyone's winning.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah.
So on that note, let's say someone wants to give you some airtime, wants to reach out to you, or has some idea, some way that they want to partner with you or learn more about Profound, learn more about Talkadot. Maybe they're a public speaker or they're interested in becoming one, something like this. How can they get in touch with you?
Luckily, I have a very weird name. My name is Arel Moodie, and I'm the only Arel Moodie in the whole world.
Is that right?
There's not another one. So if you are watching this, just type my name into Google. And, LinkedIn is probably the best way. I'm on LinkedIn probably more now, social media-wise. So you just put Arel Moodie in the LinkedIn. ProfoundMastermind.org if they want to find out about Profound. And if you're a speaker and you want to make your life easier, go to Talkadot.com. And as we like to say, if you want to talk a lot, get yourself Talkadot. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Talk CNY Economic Champions Miniseries, presented by NBT Bank. Episodes of this Center State CEO podcast are available on clickcny.com and all major podcast platforms. After each episode, you can join us on Click, where we'll continue to talk about this topic and provide additional resources and links. In Click, you can listen to or watch every episode of Talk CNY. Click is Center State CEO's digital chamber platform where our members connect, learn, and receive support from our staff. For new episode reminders, be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast listening app. If you are enjoying our series, consider leaving a quick review or a 5-star rating.
I would recommend NBT Bank to any business. My name is Chris Palomino, and I'm the president of Atlas Fence.
Chris had decided to purchase Atlas Fence from the previous owner. He had previous connections at NBT Bank.
NBT Bank provided me equipment financing, doubling our entire production workforce. It's important to me as a business owner that the decisions of our banking relationship are made locally.